All right, picture this. It's July 1896, the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. The whole place is just electric with tension, right? Everyone's arguing about the country's economic future, and then this young guy, a pretty unknown former congressman from Nebraska, he steps up to the stage, and what he's about to say, well, it's going to change American politics forever.
And with those words, the whole convention hall just erupts. I mean, first, there's this moment of just stunned silence. Then, absolute chaos. Delegates are weeping, they're shouting, they're literally carrying this guy on their shoulders. He's just delivered one of the most powerful, most famous speeches in all of American history.
So, who was the man behind those words? That was William Jennings Bryan, and his Cross of Gold speech, man, it did way more than just win him the presidential nomination. It basically defined a battle for the very soul of the nation.
Okay, so to really get why this speech landed with such a punch, you gotta understand the man himself, and, just as important, the really desperate times that made him. So, who was William Jennings Bryan? I mean, the guy had a truly remarkable career. He was a congressman, a three-time presidential nominee. He even served as Secretary of State and was a famous lawyer. But the thing that really defined him and powered his entire political life, was his incredible gift for public speaking. And you know what? He knew it. Bryan recognized this power in himself early on. For him, being a great speaker wasn't just a skill. It was this profound responsibility, a force he absolutely believed he had to use for good.
And boy, did he find a cause. You have to understand, out in the American heartland, during these economic depressions of the late 1800s, farmers were just getting crushed. The prices for their crops were tanking, but their debts? Nope, those stayed the same. They were absolutely desperate for a champion, and Bryan looked around and said, okay, I'll be that guy.
So this brings us to the huge debate of the era, gold versus silver. And here's a simple way to think about it. Imagine the nation's money supply is a pie. On one side, you've got the gold standard folks, mostly Republicans and big business. They want to keep that pie the exact same size. That way, every slice, every dollar holds its value. They called it sound money. But on the other side, you've got Bryan and his supporters championing free coinage of silver. What do they want to do? They wanted to add a whole bunch of silver to the recipe, basically baking a much, much bigger pie. Now, this would cause inflation, right? Each dollar is worth a little less. But if you're a farmer with a mountain of debt, that's a lifeline. Suddenly, those loans are way easier to pay back. This was the fight.
So after that electrifying Cross of Gold speech, Bryan snags the Democratic nomination. And just like that, the stage is set for one of the most passionate, dramatic elections in American history.
And I mean, the choice for voters could not have been more clear. On one side, you have the Republican, William McKinley. He's all about economic conservatism, championing business interests and the gold standard. And on the other side, you've got Bryan, who just crisscrosses the entire country, spreading what he called the silver gospel directly to farmers and laborers. And wow, did the people respond. Get this. During the campaign, Bryan was getting 2,000 letters of support every single day. This wasn't just a political campaign anymore. It was a full-blown movement, fueled by the hopes of millions of regular Americans. But here's the thing. Passion doesn't always translate to power, especially when it comes to money. McKinley's campaign, backed by big business, had a huge financial advantage. We're talking they outspent Bryan's grassroots effort fivefold. It was a total David versus Goliath situation. And of course, the opposition wasn't just sitting back. They painted Bryan as this dangerous radical. You see these political cartoons from the time, one famously showing him as a giant serpent literally swallowing the Democratic Party's mule. The message was clear. This guy is a populist extremist, hijacking a major party for his crazy ideas. The whole country was just gripped by this election. I mean, almost 80% of eligible voters cast a ballot. That is a ridiculously high number. But in the end, all of Bryan's passionate support in the farm states, it just wasn't enough. McKinley's money and his solid support in the more population-dense Northeast, that's what won him the presidency.
So Bryan lost. End of story, right? Well, not even close, because this is where the story gets really, really interesting. His defeat, it turns out to be one of the most influential losses in all of American history.
I mean, look, on the surface, it looks like a complete and total failure. He doesn't just lose the presidency in '96, he loses 2 more times after that. And to add insult to injury, in 1900,
Congress passes the Gold Standard Act. It looked like the debate was over, for good. His main cause was just dead in the water. And his campaign had this other huge, maybe even unintended consequence. See, by taking up all those issues from the Populist Party, Bryan basically sucked all of their supporters into the Democratic Party. This fusion, as they called it, was the end of the line for the Populists as their own independent force.
But, and this is the big twist, while the Populist Party died, their ideas sure didn't. By bringing those ideas into the mainstream, Bryan made sure they survived. And these exact same ideas, the ones that were once called radical, they became the intellectual groundwork for the entire progressive movement. Think about it. A federal income tax, the direct election of senators by the people. These are pillars of our government today. And they started out as fringe populist demands that Bryan's campaign forced into the national conversation.
And that's the ultimate paradox of William Jennings Bryan. The guy never won the presidency, but by losing, he actually forced the whole country to grapple with these ideas that would eventually be adopted and completely reshape the nation. So yeah, he lost the battles, but you could make a pretty strong case that he won the war of ideas. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about, doesn't it? When you look at the grand sweep of history, what really counts as a political victory? Is it winning the election and holding the office? Or is it changing the entire conversation for generations to come?